Lucas, back to you.
And we're joined by Bret Baier. He's anchor of Special Report. And you have updates, up-to-the-minute updates from just even a few moments ago, Bret.
Yeah, Dana and Bill, good morning. I just got off the phone with the president. He is very pleased with how things are going. Obviously, is disheartened about the loss of life, and there may be more, he said, along the way. But as far as the progress, he said they are ahead of where they thought they would be. I want to read some of these quotes that I asked him and how he answered. He said that as far as a plan, they do have a plan, always had a plan. The intelligence, the level of intelligence that they've had up until this point is truly amazing. I asked, so what you're saying is that you know there is somebody on the ground in Iran that is going to rise up. Quote, yeah, I feel there is. I feel that, and some of them are no longer with us, to be honest, because it was 49 leaders that were taken out. That was going to take 4 weeks, we thought, to get rid of the Iranian leadership. And it's always, you know, if they hide, it's a lot longer than 4 weeks. And they would have been hiding. We were shocked when we heard what was going on. We knew exactly what was happening and where. 49 leaders. And, you know, they're talking about using people now that nobody ever heard of, even though they don't know. They're using people, studying people to be the leader that even they don't know who they are. Can you believe that? I said, it's a tough succession plan in Iran. He said 49 leaders is deep. It's very deep. When they met for breakfast. They assumed it was good for a lot of reasons. Number one, they didn't think we knew, but you never attack in the morning, having to do with winds and sun and a lot of things. It was amazing that we knew everything we knew. He said there is a plan. He points to Venezuela as a template, which means to me that going in, they had some sense on the ground of what was coming next. As far as the military operation, he said there is no greater military in the U.S., and he was praising General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, for the news conference that he just watched. Cut and dry, as he said, central casting, and they have a job to do, and they're getting it done. Wow. So from the President of the United States, he is pleased, does believe that this is going faster than they thought, and he believes that 4 weeks is something that they had put as a kind of calendar of what they were looking at as setting the table for the Iranians to do what they do.
Good stuff there, Bret. Let me just follow up on this Venezuela comparison. Two different theaters, obviously, two different countries, two different nations, two very different situations, honestly. When I hear him talk about Venezuela, I interpret that to mean the length of time that a military operation would take. Is that your read on that?
Yeah, I also think that maybe, reading between the lines here, that there was intel interaction, whether it's with the Israelis on the ground, Mossad, or some kind of knowledge about what the after plan looks like. And I think that we are going to learn over time that in Venezuela, that was the case, as far as a succession to Maduro. He's saying that the success that they're seeing right now in Venezuela is the success that he believes is possible in Iran based on what they know. And again, I'm reading between the lines here. This is a much different theater. It's a much different operation. It's much bigger in scope, and there are a lot of variables that we don't know. But from the president's point of view, right now, it's going as well or better than they expected going in.
One of the things, Bret, that is different now, also partly because of the Abraham Accords, and then again, the October 7th attacks by Iran and its proxies against Israel, is that you have the Middle East in a united position against Iran. And it's just like, that is so different from how it's been in the past. And I know you talked to a lot of people in the region. What's the latest on that?
Just talked to some diplomats and some leaders from overseas in that region. It is a united front. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are offensive measures responding to the Iranian attacks that hit some of those Middle East allies in coming days. You saw a statement from the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, that includes UAE and Saudi Arabia and Oman and Qatar and Kuwait. They are all saying that they are poised to respond with aggressive tactics to what Iran has done. Remember that hundreds and hundreds of drones and missiles and attacks have hit the Gulf Arab allies from Iran in recent days. And they've put a lot of those down, but we've seen that some of those have gotten through. It has stiffened the spine of the Gulf Arab states, to your point, Dana, and I think that we haven't seen that ever.
No.
So you've got the Gulf states, and you've got European partners who weighed in on Sunday. You got France, Germany, and the UK siding with the U.S. Maybe you could say, hey, what took you 48 hours, but nonetheless, it's done. And moments ago, Macron in Paris says that France will allow temporary deployment of its nuclear-armed aircraft to allied countries as part of its nuclear strategy. What I see here is a continued isolation of Iran. Although this past hour, the Chinese put out a statement on behalf of Iran, I didn't read a lot of support into that. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did, yeah.
I mean, we're seeing this country on an island, essentially.
I mean, when the China statement is fairly lukewarm, that tells you a lot. When Russia is not really bold in its response, I mean, Russia has its hands full in Ukraine and other places, but I think that you are seeing an isolation. Europe was a little slow off the starting line, and you had the UK putting restrictions on where flights could come from. Now that has been lifted, and I think that they have been active now in defending Israel from in the air. I expect you're going to hear the Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu on an interview with Sean Hannity later tonight. We expect to get some of that after he tapes it, but there is a real sense that they are having success, and now the question is, when is the point at which the Iranians rise up? And do they have the arms and the wherewithal? Has that come into the country to be able to take places on the ground from the Iranians themselves?
I had two thoughts. One is thinking back to a week or two ago, the president and the Board of Peace meeting that he had in Washington, D.C., and like that personal diplomacy with all of those leaders from around the world. Many of them are Muslim countries, and it'd be interesting to see the overlay about this with the support from those individuals. In addition, there is what seems like a small issue about Diego Garcia. And this is the island where the Allied forces have used for years to refuel. The UK Prime Minister has basically decided to give it away to Mauritius. This is actually a big diplomatic, geopolitical issue. And I would imagine that right now it is possible that President Trump is saying to Keir Starmer at the UK, let's not do that. Let's pull that back. Let's make sure that this remains in American and UK and Western allies' hands for now, at least, so that we can make sure we have what we need in the region.
Yes, 100%. And he said that publicly before. Now the UK is kind of stepping back from their plans and allowing the US to launch from there. It's a big issue because it's a jumping point to the Middle East for us for big equipment like the B-2 bombers, etc. I also think, Dana, to your point, this is a broader sense of what it means globally. And don't think that this success early, and we have a long way to go potentially, and day by day, obviously, we're reporting what's happening. You see those F-15s with friendly fire in Kuwait. Fortunately, the pilots all ejected safely. But this is a dangerous, dangerous place and time. But this success early is sending a message to the world. And the number one message that it's sending is to China and what it's doing and what they're watching every day of the success of the U.S. military.
All right. And we can also report some of these airlines in that region are reopening limited air flight, which suggests, too, that they have a level of comfort for flying into that part of the world, which could be dramatic.
This is one point. Let me just say, if
please.
It's less than 4 weeks, if it's tighter than that and they have real success and everything stops, the global economy is going to take a breath, too, and that could be a big boon.
Thank you, Brett. We'll see you throughout the day at 6 o'clock in Special Report. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.